Chapter 22. The Hard Rock and the Sad Café. I walked into the room, unable to shake the burden of heartache, and wondering what the hell was wrong with all these guys, to find Lucas sitting there watching German television. He was excited about it because it was a live performance. It was Sister Sledge with We Are Family. Really? How miserably apropos to have such a happy song playing while my heart feels like this, I thought. "Hey, sit down and watch this with me. It's a really great performance," he said, looking relaxed and unburdened since his earlier confession. I stared through the TV, feeling downcast, as well as heartbroken and 16, with a dull, aching numbness spreading through me. It would come to be one of my favorite songs, but I said with dull veracity, glancing at the tube, "This sucks." He came back at me gently, asking me to sit on his lap instead of the side of the chair, with a lecture about embracing all kinds of music. He did not realize that I had just arrived, following the best, worst, and longest elevator ride of my entire life. I would have said that Led Zeppelin sucked at that moment, as Prince would later pen in an ode to the elevator before his tragic, ironic death in one. If the elevator tries to bring you down, go crazy, punch a higher floor. I turned compassionately to Lucas, realizing his ignorance of the facts, and said, "Of course, I didn't mean that. I'm just feeling upset because you all get to go on with your lives, and I have had so much fun here. I feel at home when I'm here. When you leave, I have to go back to my hellish life." "It can't be that bad," he said. "You have no idea," I responded. He told me that he needed to go out for a little while to meet with Caesar, but I could hang in the room and relax or take a nap if I was feeling tired. So I did. I lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling with my senses in overload from all the chaos that the situation had wrought. I reviewed in my mind what I had told my mother about my activities, which was nothing at all. I hadn't overtly lied, but I had been running away and skipping school without her knowledge for several days. She just thought that I was elsewhere. If I didn't go home tonight and make an appearance, I would blow it at home. I knew that I could deal with the school absences if I was careful until the end of the semester. Lucas returned a little over an hour later and asked me if I was feeling any better. I lied and said that I was. I added sincerely, "I'm here now, so I will enjoy it to the very last moment. I'm going to have to go home tonight, or my mother will miss me." "Tonight?" he asked, slightly alarmed, as though there was something important about tonight. "Yes, tonight," I said flatly, with reality sinking in, that I was still 16 and had to follow parental house rules, whether I liked it or not. "Why?" I queried. Lucas looked at me, a bit fascinated, and said, "The band asked me to invite you to go out with them tonight to the Hard Rock in Sachsenhausen as their guest." "Oh, really?" I said, catching the vibe, with a little bit of hope spiraling up in my heart. I calculated the time that he had been away. I had given my yellow notebook to Caesar hours ago, and it was quite possible, though unexpected, that even Anthony may have read part of it by now. Oh, could fortune have smiled down on me again and given me another opportunity to see them both later on tonight? "Why don't you call and ask your mother if you can go? It's really rare for the whole band to invite someone out as their guest," he pressed. "Yeah, I know, but you don't know my mother," I said, hoping beyond hope that she might just allow me the opportunity that this afforded. So my notebook had obviously made an unforeseen and surprising impression. I debated in my head and decided to risk the call for permission. She was expecting me to be home early tonight, and there was no way that I could do both, be at home and at the Hard Rock with Voyage at the same time. So I took a deep breath, picked up the phone, and dialed her number at work. She sounded hurried as usual whenever I called her there, and asked me what I wanted. "Mom, I need to ask you something really important." I started off well with confidence. "What is it?" she asked, distracted. "Remember that band that I told you about that I love so much?" I asked. My heart rose up into my throat as I said, "The one that I went to see?" "Yes," she said, sounding more engaged. "Well, I met them and have been spending some time with them. They invited me to go out tonight to the Hard Rock in Sachsenhausen." The "oh my God" bomb was dropped in silence, and now it exploded on the other end of the phone. Voice raised to a fever pitch, she said, "You what?" I met them and have been spending time with them, and they are really nice, very respectful. They invited me to go out with them tonight as their guest. Repetition seemed appropriate, as the gears turned, and my mother began to realize that I had been spending unauthorized time with a rock band. In her defense, this was assuredly a mother's worst nightmare. But had she handled it differently and met me halfway, things may have been better for all of us. Then it came, like a dagger to the heart, the harsh tone in a raised voice, filled with anger, that sounded completely devoid of love. Her voice, elevated to yelling, was designed to intimidate me into submission. It sounded like meanness through the phone when she said, "You get your ass home right now, or I will have the police and the military police and whoever else I can call out looking for you and them." She meant it. It was not a threat. It was a promise. I knew that I couldn't risk going out now without her permission, knowing that she knew where I intended to go. It would have been a bloodbath of mortification to do so, and not just for me. Our fates were sealed. Whatever magic may have happened was now only energy and potential. Asking for permission was a calculated risk that I had to take, and it failed. My only course of action was to comply. Compliance would assure that I could return tomorrow and finish off what was certainly a profound chapter of my life without interference from her. There must be no further asking on my part, and no challenge to her authority in any way at all. So to keep the peace, that is exactly what I did. "Yes, Mother," I said. "We'll talk about this later," she said. "Okay," I responded in a neutral tone of voice. She told me that she was working late and expected to find me home when she got there. I knew that I would have to minimize the entire thing or suffer the consequences. I hung up the phone and said to Lucas, "I have to go home or there will be hell to pay." "No, really?" he asked, sounding shocked. "Can't you just stay here a while longer? Or just go out tonight for a little while and leave early?" "No," I said, knowing my mother's fury and determination to keep me from having any unauthorized fun at all. "Do you really have to go?" he asked sincerely. "Yes, Lucas, I really have to go. But the band want to talk to you about something." He pushed harder, revealing the true purpose of tonight's proposed activities. "Then it's just going to have to wait," I said. "Please just tell them that I will be back tomorrow. If I don't go home right now, they won't see me again at all." Lucas acquiesced, saying, "Okay, here. Take a taxi home. Is this enough?" He handed me 100 marks. "Will it get you back here tomorrow?" "Yes," I exhaled. "It should be enough." "I'll walk you down," he said quietly, looking concerned. So we continued our evening ritual of Lucas escorting me down to the lobby and walking me out through the front doors of the Continental Hotel. From there, we would bridge the gap across the wide-open concrete space under the austere Frankfurt sky to the taxi stand. Then I would pick one of the pretty little cream-colored Mercedes taxis, and he would open the door for me and say goodbye. Tonight, he asked for my phone number, so I gave it to him. I strongly cautioned him not to call unless it was absolutely necessary. The taxi ride home was beyond awful, because my brief hope of spending more time with both Anthony and Caesar was dashed, all because my mother would never have understood it. Leaving so quickly, I felt heartsick, because I didn't have my notebook returned to me, and would have to wait until tomorrow for a great many answers to my questions. When I got home, no one was downstairs when the phone rang, so I answered it quietly and closed the door to the living room. It was Lucas. "Hey, the band really want to see you tonight. Is there any way you can come out?" "No," I said, resigned to my fate. "Tell them that I will be back tomorrow. I promise." "It's important," he said with some urgency. "They want to talk with you. Listen, if I go to the Hard Rock tonight, my mother will have the police out looking for me. Believe me, I want to go, but I can't. I love to dance." "Okay," he said. "I'll see you tomorrow." "Yes, you will. Thank the band for me." "I will," he said. "Okay, have a good night," I said before I hung up the phone and crept carefully up to my room. Because I did not argue or bring it up and had complied with her instructions, there was no conversation about it at all. She was obviously busy at work and tired when she arrived home, saying again that we would talk about it later. I thanked God for the distraction of her work. It provided me with the opportunity to get the closure that needed to happen with the band tomorrow. The next morning, I got ready to go, apparently to school, and ran away to spend my last day with the traveling circus at the Continental Hotel. I walked down to the local taxi stand and got in saying, "The Continental," for the last time. The driver looked at me dressed up in my boots and blazer as he nodded, smiled, and set the meter. I couldn't wait to hear what Voyage had to say that was so important. When I arrived, I went sadly and excitedly directly up to the room, feeling the last day tugging on my heart. Lucas opened the door and beckoned me to enter. He explained that the band were doing a lot of publicity today and didn't have any time at all to talk until later. He said that Anthony and Caesar wanted to meet me that evening at the hotel café before I had to go home. So fate hit the brakes. It was a long and boring day, spent with me dreading the end of it, which was the goodbye that I didn't want to say. There were alternating clouds and sunshine as time continued to creep on for what was to come. At some point, while I was wandering the halls, I saw Lisa's older sister, Alice, applying some eyeliner in one of the open rooms. I approached her curiously and said hi, wondering to myself what she was doing there. I watched her put the pretty steely blue liner under her eyes, and she offered it to me. Liking the color, I accepted it and asked the obvious question hanging in the air while I lined my eyes. She told me that she wanted to find out why her sister had been treated so rudely by Caesar. There was nothing I could say, except that I didn't know, though I thought her visit was pointless. Caesar was just being Caesar. He was a rock star among many things, and behaving in a somewhat spoiled and entitled way was one of those things. The face that he presented to me was warm, kind, and thoughtful, revealing his inner self. He didn't show me his darker side. I knew that it existed, but I felt a real affection for him, and it was unconditional in nature. The light in his eyes was enough for me to believe that he had a good heart, buried beneath his interesting exterior and the machinations of his ego. I left Alice to her mission and headed back down the hall to find Lucas when I ran into Diana. She motioned for me to come to the room with overflowing wells of excitement. We hadn't run into each other for a while, so we wanted to catch up on everything that we missed. "So you went to the Hard Rock last night with the band, right?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes," she said with eyes gleaming. "Why didn't you come?" "My mother wouldn't let me," I said sadly, adding, "So, how was it?" "It was great," she said. "I wish you could have gone." "Of course it was," I almost whispered. I wanted to be there. Lucas said they wanted to talk to me. "Oh, yeah," Diana said. "They do. Caesar asked me about you and the things that you write. He said, 'Do you know why Cheri writes the things that she does?'" "And what did you say?" I asked, with animated interest. Diana looked at me as only she could, as if enacting a replay. I said, "I don't know, Caesar. She's really cool and great to hang out with, but sometimes she writes these things that make you want to curl up into a little ball and die." We laughed at the enigma that was me. "Listen," she said, "I have to go meet up with Sam. It's our last day together." "Of course. I'll see you later," I smiled. The hours dragged by, as though pulled by ailing horses, drawing out my agony for the meeting in the café, where we would talk about something important and say goodbye. I felt the tension because of the drama behind the scenes, and promised myself that I wouldn't cry. At long last, it was time, and I was prepared. Having said goodbye to everyone I loved in the States, I was familiar with the bittersweet sadness that awaited me there. Yet, I found myself still tingling with excitement to see Caesar and Anthony again. When Lucas arrived at the café, he said to my great dismay, "Anthony isn't coming down, but Caesar is on his way." "Why isn't he coming down?" I asked, already knowing the reason beating inside my own chest. "He said that he just couldn't do it," Lucas stated, sounding both sorry and disappointed, while we sat down at the round, unappealing table. "Did he say why? Does he have something else to do?" I pressed. "No," Lucas sighed and shook his head, saying quietly, "He said that it was just too much." "Great," I thought as I sighed. "That's just great. At that moment, Caesar arrived, looking polished and apologizing he couldn't see me earlier in the day. I had to do promo for the band. It's okay, I get it, you're a rock star, I said, unsarcastically with ironic flair, knowing he hated it. He was wearing jeans with a black blazer and not really looking rock starish at all. He just seemed like a guy that was dressed up for a dinner date, smelling great to boot. Caesar was much younger than Anthony and closer to a socially acceptable age to date a soon-to-be 18-year-old, but a lot could happen in 15 months. As I took in his visage, he began the most excruciating display of concern that I had ever seen, asking me questions about my home life. How was it for me there? Was anyone at home hurting me physically or abusive towards me? This was a line of questioning that didn't sit well with me. I felt disappointment creeping in under my skin. There was no good way to explain how unceasingly horrid it was to endure the unspoken enmity between my parents, because it was completely silent, wreaking havoc daily on all our lives. When they did fight, it was horrible as well. I said flatly, "No, it's not like that." He then asked, obviously referring to my poem about the Major, "Then what is it?" Despite his best intentions, I felt somewhat annoyed by his queries. I was there by invitation, but God only knew who had been whispering in his ear. There was a steady stream of high school girls coming through this place, adding honesty or fiction to my own notebook's purely innocent, unguarded authenticity. Because it was filled with despair and unrest, as well as my deepest hopes and dreams, it revealed me in a way that was the simple, uncontrived truth of my existence. I began to feel completely overwhelmed because it was all just too much to explain. I had already started protecting my heart from the pain that would inevitably follow this meeting. I noticed as Lucas looked past me to the lobby and silently acknowledged someone there watching us from a distance. I knew that it was Anthony, but because it was behind me, I couldn't turn around and look. I surrendered to my inner poet and said quietly, "Delusions of grandeur." "What?" asked Caesar, seeming annoyed and distracted by Anthony's presence in the distance. My words went completely over Caesar's head, incomprehensible to him. Maybe it was too much to expect him to understand. Lucas remained silent and glanced briefly behind me again. I raised my arms to demonstrate to Caesar, saying, "Look around. This is your life. The hotel, the chandelier, the lights, the road, the show. It's your life, not mine. You belong here." Feeling the impending loss deeply, I finished. "It's not my life. It's yours." It was a moment of glaring clarity where all the lines were blurred, but I was mistaken. I thought that I didn't belong there, but I did. That was exactly why I was there in the first place. It could have been my life if I had chosen it. There was a part of me that wanted it, in conflict with another part of me that didn't, and I was confounded as to why. I found it all beautiful, yet simultaneously ridiculously confusing and tedious. With the constant stream of band politics, along with the unexpected unspoken love triangle that developed, I was thoroughly exhausted. "What does that have to do with anything?" Caesar asked, again sounding slightly less annoyed, briefly glancing past me, trying not to alert me to Anthony's presence. He then turned his eyes and irritation by proxy back to me, and it happened. Tears welled up, and I started to cry, wetting my lashes and smearing my eyeliner. Caesar and Lucas were at my mercy as they saw the tears in my eyes, and they both backed off a bit, giving me space to breathe and respond. "It's not that I don't want to tell you. It's that I can't talk about it. You're leaving tomorrow, and I have to go back to my life, and you'll be gone." I trailed off with tears still welled up in my shining eyes, saying, "This is hard enough as it is. No, I won't do it. I promised myself that I wouldn't cry. If I talk about it, I'll just cry, and I'm not going to do that." "It's okay," Caesar said softly. "You don't have to cry." "I'm sorry," I said. I excused myself, adding, "I'm going to the bathroom to clean myself up," as the two of them looked at me and each other with real concern. I walked head up and shoulders back to the bathroom. When I got there, I cleaned up the stray blue eyeliner from under my eyes because it made me feel exposed. As I looked in the mirror and dried my eyes, I spoke silently to myself, reminding myself to not let this be the end of me. I walked again tall and with purpose back to the table. They had obviously spoken about me in my absence, given the expressions they wore. All they needed to know about the contents of my heart was right there in my yellow notebook. I didn't want to talk about it. That's why I wrote it down. I didn't know that as an empath, the consequences of giving away a piece of me meant that there would always be invisible strings connecting it to me and me to it, no matter where it went. "Why didn't you tell me that my eyeliner was smeared under my eyes?" I admonished them. They both looked at me blankly, like they hadn't even noticed. "Never mind," I said, not knowing what else to say. "Are you hungry? Do you want something to eat?" Lucas asked me, sounding concerned. I responded, "No, I'll eat later. I should probably go. I need to get home." It was a stalemate, and there was no more to be discussed. Caesar didn't have my notebook with him, and I didn't ask him to return it, now feeling his attachment to it and to me. He excused himself and headed in the direction of the mystery voyeur, saying that he would be right back. Lucas looked at me, face full of care, and said, "Listen, the band is coming back this way in 2 weeks for a longer break. I have your number, and I'll call you then." He dug around in his wallet and handed me several D-marks for the taxi ride home, saying, very seriously, "I'm not going to walk you out tonight. Caesar wants to walk out with you, so this is goodbye." I felt somewhat surprised and sad all at the same time, as I thanked him, saying, "Okay, here, let me give you a hug goodbye." I tucked the marks away in my pocket and put my arms around his neck. "Take care of yourself, and thank you," he said, most sincerely. "You too," I said, as Caesar returned, ready to go. "Are you ready?" he asked me, grabbing his jacket with his eyes aglow. In his jeans and blazer, he really looked nothing at all like a rock star during those moments. He was just a guy getting ready to walk a girl out to a taxi and say goodbye. "Yeah, I'm ready. It's best not to prolong this any more than we have to," I said with a brave face and a heavy heart.